Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Reading Bear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we will take a look at some new revenge content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
First one is titled, Dishonest Neighbor Finds Himself Unable to Sell His House. TLDR. Neighbor was being a nuisance with the property line, so my dad found an immovable object to match his unstoppable force. This isn't my pro-revenge but my father's, who escalated his petty revenge to all-out professional. Years ago my neighbor was trying to sell his house during the fall and he was selling it for incredibly more than it was worth, almost 6 figures higher. To make the property seem worth that figure, he would wake up early in the morning and take a leaf blower and blow the leaves past his front lawn into our backyard, and then some, making it seem like his front yard went all the way to our driveway and also included our beautiful tree older than all the homes in the area combined. We never had a backyard fence because his kids were my age and we'd all play on the swing attached to that tree together. We were all cool. My dad wasn't too keen on this because he didn't want to get in a property dispute with the new owner, so he found the official property lines, and guess what? His front lawn ended about 3 feet from his house. So my dad bought some little stakes with orange ribbon and hammered them into the ground to show where the actual property line was. Next day they were gone, thrown into the woods that surround us. My dad fetched them, nailed them back in and knocked on the door asking him to cut the shit. Next day gone once again with a passive-aggressive note on our door. My dad is a rather intimidating guy when frustrated, and he was apparently too scared to be confrontational, saying we need to just be cool with it and let him do his scam so he can sell the house. My dad then decided to up the ante and went to a hardware store and bought 4 12-foot iron rods, took out his ladder, and used the backside of an axe to nail it about 8 to 9 feet into the ground, and then watered the grass or did something so it couldn't just be yanked right out. So now there were just 4 ugly rods poking out of the lawn with bright orange ribbon tied to the top. My family goes away for a weekend, came back Monday, and all 4 are gone, tossed into the woods, and our backyard in those 4 spots are trashed with little holes from when he spent hopefully a long time digging those bad bois up. Obviously my dad was furious and he just silently stood there for about 20 minutes with a burning rage deep inside, and our entire family could him scheming. He turned around, hopped back in the car and disappeared for hours, only to return with a tow truck coming behind him. He popped over to a junkyard, found essentially a frame of a car and bought it for its worth in metal, and then had it shipped to his backyard, which he plopped just before the property line. My dad walked into our house like a great conqueror saying, "Let's see him throw that into the woods." The neighbor showed up later that afternoon, followed by prospective buyers who just stood him his driveway gawking at the junker 4 feet from the house. He tried to brush it off, and as soon as they left he came over just yelling about how he was going to call the cops on us and home association for depreciating the value of his property, to which my dad said, "Sure, go ahead and I'll let them know about what you've been pulling for the past few weeks." Eventually they came to the agreement that the junker would leave the yard if he paid to have it removed and shipped away, and ever since then he stopped messing with the yard and stopped messing with the leaves. Next one is titled, Revenge Runs in the Family. So this was during senior year, and this is how my mom destroyed both my bully and her terrible father who enabled this crap. I walked home from school because it was faster than the bus and I didn't have to get up until like 9:30 because I had no first period class. Well, today some girl that lives in the neighborhood who already hated me decided to just try and ducking punch me. She did hit me, but since she got close I grabbed her weave and it came out as I slammed her face into the concrete. There was a cop who lived pretty much right there and came out to see what happened. I had a bruised jaw and she had a bloody lip and nose and no weave, but the cop had seen what happened, so when she tried to say I started the fight he knew she was lying and refused to arrest me since it was ruled as self-defense. I got home and told my mom what happened, and when I told her the name of the girl, which seemed to ring a bell because she went to check her computer, and apparently this girl's dad treated my mom like crap and owed her 2 months worth of late rent money. The next day was Saturday, so my mom took me with her to go talk to the guy, and I was behind her, but I am taller than her by like 6 inches, so he was trying to fuss at both of us and threatened to press charges on my mom for harassment, and me for assault since his daughter obviously played victim. Now I am in no way intimidating as I'm about 5'5", 95 pounds, and look like the edgy goth anime character a lot of fangirls want to squeeze to death. Bags under the eyes included. Basically a male and goth version of the girl from Watamote. I wasn't scared because if he tried to hit me then my short mother would taser him in the balls until the battery died. But no, this is how things played out. My mom handed him an eviction letter and said if he did not have the rent for this month and the late rent within the next 30 days then he will be taken to court, and if his daughter tried to fight me again she would see to it that girl gets a full-on assault and battery charge before she graduates. The girl transferred a week later and we went up to the mountains for a vacation with all the extra money from all that back rent. Next one is titled, Yes, I understand it's a public street. Now, let's learn the difference between legality and civility, okay? This happened in the summer of 2016 when my wife and I moved into our new home on a tree-lined, brick street. Nice neighborhood but nothing fancy. Blue-collar, working men and women. We met the neighbors, my wife made cookies and they invited us to their pool parties, we swapped foodstuffs and recipes. It was all Ozzy and Harriet, until I put a fence up around our backyard for security, firstly as anyone could come off the back alley and right up onto our porch and back door. Plus, I wanted to be able to let our 2 short-hair pointers out to play without having to tie them up or supervise them. Well, our neighbors didn't like that, and who can say why? It disturbed their visual routine, they were resistant to change, they suffer from fractophobia? Never did find out. 3 things changed. 1. They no longer invited us to their pool parties. 2. We no longer traded cookies and pies. And lastly they began parking in front of our house. It's a public street and you can do as you will, but my 2 spaces were constricted by a telephone pole that had guy wires coming down from it. Meaning you'd have to be careful getting into and out of your car lest you scratch the paint, or worse, clothesline yourself with metal cables. So we had but one good spot that lined up our car door with the sidewalk perfectly, and that became their default parking space despite the fact that they had their spaces and a 2-car garage off the alley in the back. They also started an illicit piano lessons business, better than drums, I suppose, and apparently decided to keep their front spots open for their customers. I work odd hours and it always seemed there were a line of cars in front of both houses, so I'd end up having to park frustratingly far away, and with winter coming, trudging through the slush carrying groceries had zero appeal. So I watched and waited until one fine fall day with the leaves changing from green to vermilion and brilliant gold, and a morning chill that promised of winter soon to come, it happened. Their 3 to 5 cars, the live at home, unemployed daughter maintained a rotating cast of paramours, were gone, and nobody was giving piano lessons. I struck. I raced to my dad's and hitched his houseboat to his beater farm truck and towed the combo back home, parking 80 feet plus of gloriously tacky redneck hardware directly in front of their house, while my vehicle took up our prime spot and most of the telephone tripwire space as well. And I left the combo there for almost 2 weeks, unmoving, and rusting loudly right in front of their front porch swing that they liked to perch on in the evenings. Pressure from my wife and the impending monthly street sweeping finally led to my removing the blockade, and they've not parked in front of our place since, nor have we spoken more than 5 words in 2 years, and that's fine by us. The woman can't bake anyhow. Next one is titled, Revenge of the Construction Workers. I am a teacher, and when I was younger, I would take summer jobs to supplement my income. One summer, I worked for a bricklayer named Jerry and heard an amazing story. I worked for Jerry in the mid-90s, so the story either happened in the early 90s or in the 80s. Here goes. The setting for the story was a community of small rural towns which had only one brick contractor. Jerry began his career as a bricklayer working for this contractor, a real jerk. Jerk and Jerk's son, adult working the business with his father, would harass, belittle, and humiliate all their employees on a regular basis. No work was ever good enough and employees were told they weren't worth what they were paid. Not only did Jerk mistreat his employees, but he was equally rude to other subcontractors and to the general contractors who hired him. Since he was the only bricklayer in the community, there was nothing anyone could do about it. Needless to say, the turnover rate for the brick business was very high. The only person that stuck with Jerk and company was Jerry. Jerry told me that his father had instilled a self-confidence in him that Jerry could do anything he set his mind to do and that he should not evaluate himself according to what others said, but, rather by the facts. Although Jerry was belittled by Jerk and Son as were all other employees, Jerry was becoming a very good bricklayer. Jerry knew he was good. Jerk knew Jerry was good. But, Jerk didn't know that Jerry knew he was good. Not only was Jerry a good bricklayer, he was very respectful to the boss who disrespected him. Jerk thought that Jerry was a naive pushover who was buying his head games. That would prove to be a huge mistake on his part. One day, Jerry was doing an exceptionally good job of laying brick. Not only was his craftsmanship amazing, he was laying brick at a high rate of speed so that he was making his boss lots of money. Of course, Jerk and Son were belittling his work as though he was doing the very opposite. This scenario was being observed by the general contractor of the project. After work that day, the general contractor asked Jerry to stay behind so he could talk to him. As did every other construction worker in the community, general contractor hated working with Jerk. General contractor told Jerry that he had heard Jerk and Son belittling him, and told him that he disagreed with everything Jerk was saying. He asked Jerry if he had ever considered going into business for himself. Jerry said that he would like to do that someday. General contractor then said that he would loan Jerry the money to buy a mixer, the most expensive piece of equipment needed to start a brick business, if Jerry would indeed start said business. The only hitch was that Jerry would need to pay for the mixer whenever he could and that he would subcontract under general contractor. Jerry agreed to those terms and prepared to begin his new venture. Jerry respectfully told Jerk and Son his plans and gave his notice. The two mocked Jerry ruthlessly and laughed him to scorn. Jerk told Jerry, "You'll be back in 2 months begging to return to your job. You'll never make it as a subcontractor." 2 months later, rather than collapsing as Jerk predicted, Jerry was still in business and going strong. 1 year later, Jerry's business was booming and a drunk Jerk showed up at Jerry's house and begged him to come back to work with Jerk and Son. "Jerry, you're the best employee I ever had." Jerry replied, "Why didn't you ever tell me that when I was working for you?" Jerk couldn't answer the question. And, Jerry obviously didn't accept the offer for employment. 2 years after beginning his entrepreneurial adventure, Jerry heard that Jerk and Son went out of business. Jerry said that he never intended to harm Jerk and Son when he accepted general contractor's offer. He said that looking back on things he realized that he had become Jerk's greatest nightmare. "I can't say that general contractor intended no harm. I thought the most amazing thing about the story was how that Jerry maintained his self-esteem in spite of all the ridicule. I also gained a respect for Jerry's father who instilled an unshakable self-confidence in Jerry." Edit. I contacted Jerry today, after 20 years, to let him know how highly you thought of him. He reminded me that his father was wheelchair-bound and accomplished so much in spite of his handicap. It was his father's overcoming huge obstacles that made Jerk's words seem to be such a minor obstacle to overcome. Next one is titled, "Use my dishes and leave them dirty?" Fine. This happened my freshman year in college. We were 4 to a dorm, with a shared kitchen. I bought a brand new set of dishes, service for 8. 8 plates, 8 bowls, and 8 mugs. And I bought a flatware set. 8 big spoons, 8 little spoons, 8 forks, 8 butter knives. I told my roommates they could feel free to use my dishes because I had such a large set, as long as they washed what they used when they used it. So simple. They agreed. About 2 months in, I had it. Every goddamn time I'd go to the kitchen to eat, every single plate, bowl, mug, fork, knife, and spoon would be sitting in the sink. Dirty. I asked, a few times, that they take care of the dishes they used. Wait, did I say dirty? Oh, no, not just dirty. They wouldn't even bother to scrape or rinse them. They had food caked and dried on, so that regular washing couldn't get rid of it. They'd have to sit in hot soapy water for hours, then be scrubbed. So I soaked and scrubbed and dried them. And then I packed every last one up and brought them back to my parents' house. Didn't even warn them I was doing it, either. Just took them all home. I bought myself plastic flatware and paper plates and kept them hidden in my room. Refused to wash the dishes I bought and allowed you all to use? Fine. No ducking dishes for you. Last one is titled, Eat My Food? Try my special habanero chocolate cake. My old college roommate didn't know how to cook or do dishes and didn't go food shopping much. This led to him eating my food, especially my leftovers, as those were prepared meals. I would use my leftovers to meal prep for the week and told him to stop as it was expensive as well as inconvenient. The behavior did not stop and he actually seemed to be eating more of my food out of spite. To punish him, I baked a chocolate cake with habanero peppers and mixed the frosting with wasabi. I labeled it with my name and a bold, "Do not eat," and waited. This guy has a very low tolerance for spicy foods, so I thought he would take one bite, quickly realize the error of his ways. About 2 days later, he and a couple of his friends got really drunk while I was at work and decided to dig into my food. Somehow, they ate about a third of it before realizing, and when they inevitably went to throw up from over drinking and eating spicy foods, got hit by the cake a second time. Don't know for sure, but it couldn't have felt good coming out the back end. When he asked me why I made this monstrosity, I told him I found a chocolate habanero recipe online that I wanted to try. He stopped eating my cooking after that. Thanks for listening.